This is the RAD Position with ASRT CEO and Executive Director Melissa Pergola. A podcast for medical imaging and radiation therapy professionals. Hey there, and welcome back to the RAD Position podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Pergola.
And I am the one and only podcast partner, Ray Arambula. I'm very excited for our next guest.
Well, I'm excited for our next guest, too. I enjoy working with you, Ray, but I also really enjoy, and notice I added the really, Jason Bradley.
As I do, too. He's one of my mentors, actually.
So today we're interviewing the ASRT VP of Governance and Public Policy, Jason Bradley. He'll talk about the important role that ASRT plays in advocating for the profession. It's such an important episode, isn't it, Ray?
Yes, very excited.
So let's get started. Jason joined the ASRT staff in 2015 and has held the positions of Member Services Manager, Director of Governance, and is the current VP of Governance and Public Policy. Jason earned his associate's degree in radiography at Jefferson Community College in Steubenville, Ohio in 2002 and has been a member of the ASRT since 2004. He then obtained his bachelor's degree in organizational leadership and development from Wheeling Jesuit University in 2014 and his certified association executive credential in 2022. In his imaging career, he has worked as a staff technologist, a radiology department manager, an urgent care assistant clinic supervisor. And in his current role, Jason oversees chapter relations, affiliate relations, professional practice, the governance department, the Professional Resources and Relations Department, and the Government Relations Department. Wow, we have you with a lot of responsibility, Jason. Thank you very much for your work. With his keen ability of foresight, attention to detail, Jason works with his teams to ensure that ASRT's governing processes, governing documents, practice documents, governance committees, governing body, internal and external stakeholders, and ASRT's voice on legislative and regulatory change are evolving to meet the demands of the profession, our members, the organization, and the political environment in a way that upholds the continuity of the ASRT mission and vision. Jason, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here. I think it's really exciting to get to talk about advocacy.
Yeah.
It's not something that we talk about enough.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that. What is advocacy and why is it so important?
Well, look, I mean, the word advocacy is pretty broad. It really means to stand up for or publicly express support for or against something, right? So all of us are advocates in one way or another. As RTs, we are inherently advocates for our patients, but we also need to be strong advocates for ourselves too. We need to do this in order to be better advocates for our patients and the profession. And that's what we're specifically discussing when ASRT talks about professional advocacy.
Oh, I see. So what are some specific ways that our members can get involved in professional advocacy?
Great question. I mean, there are really many ways, some of which are to advocate on their own, on important issues with their own managers, directors, colleagues, hospital administration, et cetera. Advocate by spreading knowledge of the profession to friends and neighbors. And then there's advocacy at the state and federal level, or advocacy through ASRT engagement. So ASRT has several member benefits and volunteer opportunities that impact advocacy, either directly or indirectly. Voting in the ASRT election, serving on the Committee on Bylaws, Practice Standards, the Commission, serving as a delegate, being part of our Ambassadors for RT Advocacy program, being a mentor, joining our annual Engaging New Technologists webinar series. I mean, that's just to name a few.
Yeah, there's so many ways.
And we understand from the intro, just all the things that you and your team do, the role that you play. But going back to centering around government relations, what are the main issues that you and your team advocate for?
Yeah, so I mean, we advocate in many ways, and all of our efforts align with the ASRT mission, vision, position statements, and practice standards. That way, we're sure that we're representing ASRT and our members' voices appropriately. As far as our legislative priorities are concerned, there's really three focus areas. And so that's one is to ensure only appropriately Trained medical imaging and radiation therapy professionals are performing medical imaging and radiation therapy, which we accomplish through advocating for licensure, registration, standards, and/or equipment regulations. And that happens in each state. Um, Second is guarantee appropriate supervision of the radiologic technologist. And then third would be to secure Medicare recognition for the radiologist assistant.
So conversely, what are the main issues that you and your team advocate against?
Yeah, so I mean, that's an easier question. But so essentially, it's the opposite of the first two items we just discussed.
Yeah, Ray.
Sorry, dumb question.
You should have known that. Just kidding. But also anything that goes against the ASRT mission, vision, practice standards, and position statements.
I heard you mention state licensure, state registry, equipment regulations, a lot of words I think our audience would like to know more about. Can you elaborate on each of those and explain what's the difference between them all?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I think it's a really important topic that all RTs should understand. And Meredith Check, ASRT's Director of Government Relations and Public Policy, actually wrote an amazing blog on this issue. And so after the podcast, I would encourage members to go and
Yeah.
check that out. It's on the ASRT Advocacy Action Center.
That's awesome.
But essentially, licensure is any form of permission to practice that is granted by a state. However, states vary in terminology, so you might hear it as a license, a certificate, a permit, or something along those lines. Standards, that really means that there's a regulatory board that requires some education and training in order to be allowed to practice. And this usually happens through recognition of the national credentials. And then equipment regulations, that means that there are operator requirements included in the regulations for specific equipment. So people can only operate it if they meet these requirements. An example of that would be equipment that emits ionizing radiation.
So, Jason, that would be like North Carolina, where the CT is under the Division of Radiation Protection?
Yeah,
that
I
right?
think that's the division that it's under. But yeah, exactly. So they have equipment regulations for CT, but they don't have licensure across the board.
Right.
So, and we have several states like that where there might be equipment regulations that say in order to operate the ionizing radiation machinery that you have to have your ARRT credential, for example. But it's hit and miss really at this point across all of the states.
And I think Melissa's going to talk more about this or ask more questions around this, but this sounds like a lot that you do at the state level. Is there anything you do on the federal level as well?
There is. So we just talked about the Medicare recognition for the RA, and so MARCA, and that's something that we're working on. There's not an active bill at this point, but we do hope to see one either in the near future or the beginning of next session. And then we're always looking at what else we can do. So there's bills that we support that other organizations are working on. ASTRO is doing a rocker bill. We're supportive of that. SNMMI, our nuclear medicine sister organization, is doing a bill also for unbundling radiopharmaceuticals so that they can be billed appropriately. So currently they are reimbursed as supplies like gauze and not pharmaceuticals like drugs.
I see.
So, Jason, I've heard from some RTs that they feel as if because they hold a national credential, that they should not need to obtain a state license. So, I have a little bit of an analogy for that, but I want to ask you, why is state licensure still important? If, say, like for me, I'm already ARRT registered in radiography.
Yeah, it's a great question. We hear this all the time. So, on a grander scale, you have to think about it from the federal level. There's really no federal enforceable minimum standards. So that means it's up to each state. So holding a national credential shows that you've completed the education and training and you passed a nationally recognized competency exam, which is what we should all do and what we should all have to do.
Yeah.
But the fact is that if your state doesn't recognize that credential as a requirement through licensure, registration, standards, regulation, something, then people who've not met the same level of education, training, and competency that RTs have can do our jobs, which is dangerous and poses a threat and public misconception about the level of skill needed to keep our patients safe and ensure they receive high quality diagnostic studies and therapies.
Jason, you make some excellent points. You talk about the fact that we as individuals in the state might have our national certification, but that does not assure, if we don't have regs in the state, that everyone else does. And I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's a hunter, and I was explaining to him that sometimes RTs feel this way. Why should I also have to have a license or other regulations in my state? And he said something that really resonated with me. He said, it's an interesting argument to think that you don't need that. He said, but as a hunter, I do what I'm supposed to do to keep myself safe and to protect the others in the woods when I'm hunting. But I don't mind paying for a license in the state to hunt because it assures that everyone else that's hunting in the woods is safe. And he said, it's not just about me. My children hunt and my friends hunt. And, I think about that as an RT. I have my national certification, but if I'm in a state where it's not regulated and I go for imaging, or my loved ones or my friends or ASRT staff go for imaging, that's something that we should be concerned about as well, that everyone receives the same quality, safe care.
Absolutely. And you're talking about safety, but it's also diagnostic quality too.
Yes.
Repeat images, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
And so having that education training competency exam is an absolute must. Um, but there are 3 states currently that have no licensure regulations,
Mm.
right? And
Yes.
so you would hope that hospitals will hire qualified individuals, but if there's not a mandate of some sort that they have to do that,
Yeah.
then think about how that's impacting patient care.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ray, I don't know. I mean, you're such an immense asset to ASRT, and I know you feel purpose with this profession, but I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are around the idea with licensure like that and assuring that there is safe and quality care. As you said, if someone doesn't get a diagnosis because the image wasn't produced appropriately because the person didn't have the correct education, that's something we should all care about, right?
Absolutely. And the first thought that comes to mind is I need to go find a state where that is happening and not be in the state where that's not happening.
Yeah. Okay, so Jason, I want to switch gears just for a second, because another thing I want to talk about is an effort you and your team recently spearheaded, which was the call to action to advocate for the Bureau of Labor Statistics Office of Management and Budget to reclassify medical imaging personnel from technical to professional. Now, that effort really struck a chord with both members and non-members, and we know it resulted in an unprecedented response, and that was more than 42,000 letters being sent to the OMB. Unbelievable, just an unbelievable outcry for us really wanting to be seen. So why do you think this effort triggered this level of engagement across the profession, especially in comparison to other calls to action that are constantly going on?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what an amazing effort. I mean, I just want to
Yeah.
give a shout out to not just my team in ASRT, but all of our members,
Yes.
all of the non-members, all the RTs, anyone connected to the profession in some way that reached out for that, because more than 42,000 is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was like in a matter of less than a week.
Yeah, such a
Yeah,
short
it
time
was a
frame.
very short
Yeah.
time frame too. And so, I think when you think about it, on the surface, the issue is just something that RTs can resonate with like
Yeah.
immediately. It strikes a nerve when you hear RTs referred to as technical and not professional.
Yes.
And so I think that's really why we saw such an amazing turnout for that effort. Other calls to action, for example, ones that revolve around MARCA or the Medicare recognition of the RA or state licensure efforts, things like that just seem distant and convoluted. It's not always a big impact, easy to understand type of issue
Yeah.
that triggers that emotional response, but it should.
Right.
I mean, same as our turnout for members for voting, which is currently less than 2%
Oh my
of
goodness.
eligible
Yeah.
members actually vote in our annual election. But look at all the wonderful things that come from the election, right? Just recently, we've had the Be Seen campaign, the Invisible Heroes 5K, the Professionalism Award,
Yes.
and we're going to have all of these amazing things from current president Heather Moore.
Yeah.
And so these things don't happen unless we vote in the right people, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the easiest, I'd say, member benefit for people to engage in is to just vote and be involved. Everything we do, everything we advocate for, everything that members can help us with by getting involved, it all leads to the same goal. And
Mm,
we should be just as passionate about that as we are about being considered professional, because that really is the end goal.
right.
The goal is to be seen as professionals, to make a positive impact in the healthcare community, to advance and elevate the profession and enhance the quality and safety of patient care. Just imagine what we could accomplish if all 156,000 plus members got involved in some way
Yeah.
and stood in unison. Or better yet, the more than 360,000 RTs in this country.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really is a call to action. I hope everyone is hearing that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I
absolutely.
understand. I've been a technologist, started in X-ray school when I was 18. So I've been a technologist since I was 20 years old. And I get that whole technical versus professional. But I also understand that we have to get just as passionate about all of these other things that you talked about, right? Because together we are stronger. And we need that kind of response, whatever it is that we're doing and that your team is doing in particular to uplift the profession.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just showing up, it's how we show up.
Yeah, and I think these efforts and others that we're doing, like Melissa said, hopefully it is triggering some more engagement in around these calls to action. But I do think we're hearing that though. We were recently
Mm.
at RTC, and the term "be seen" is such a household term now, and so I think those efforts those are turning into other calls of action, and it's exciting to see. And speaking of RTC, we were just there, and I heard that your team recently went to Capitol Hill.
Woo woo.
Can you tell me or tell us what was that about? What you did, who you met with, and why was it important, and what we hope to accomplish out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, part of it is our federal effort that's currently underway that we're working with the ART, and that's the recognition of the RA through Medicare. Um, and so that was piece of it. But really, long term, what we're trying to do is be seen. We're trying to build long term relationships with people on the Hill, so that when we come up on a licensure issue or we come up on needing some help somewhere, we're a friendly face. We're
Yeah.
we're a familiar face. We're not just blindsiding them with, "Hey, here we are. This is who we are, and we need help." Right? So it's really a long-term goal of being seen, being recognized, not just in the hospital systems, but among all of our elected individuals as well.
And I would say this is another call to action, right? Thank you for setting that up. And it
Yeah.
was absolutely amazing to be able to go
Hmm.
there. And I think in my mind, having been involved in fighting for the profession previously and going into legislators' offices and having to spend, you get 10 minutes and you have to spend 7 explaining who we are. I think that your team's strategy for us to be visible before there's a need is phenomenal. It's brilliant. And one of the things that I would say is if you live in DC, that's great, go to the Capitol, but we can all reach out to our own representatives and senators in our state and they come home. We can meet with them when they're home. And I would really encourage every medical imaging and radiation therapy professional to set up appointments, explain who we are. I know one of the things when we were there, we were talking to them and we said, the real goal is just for us to educate you, right, on who we are. And one of our asks was, what we really want you to do is when healthcare legislation crosses your desk, don't just think what you consider to be the big two, doctors and nurses, right? Because we are right up there in numbers as number 3. And when you are looking at legislation like that, we want you to reach out to us. We want to be experts for you. And each listener can be that for their own representatives and senators. So I think maybe it's another call to action, Jason.
It is another call to action. You're absolutely right. And if you're going to do that and you need help or
Mm.
you want talking points, feel free to reach out to us. Government relations at asrt.org. We're happy to help.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And was it? I'm just curious. Is it really setting up an appointment, coming in with your elevator pitch, and you get 10 minutes, and that's it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty complicated to set up the appointments to begin with. And so our federal lobbyist did help with that. But then Melissa's right. Like the first 10 of the 15 minutes or 5 of the 10 minutes, whatever they're going to allow you, is just introducing yourselves,
Yeah.
right? Well, we need to get past that. We need to go into their offices and they
Yeah.
need to know who we are so that we have the full time to explain more about the profession, our members, our patients, and why this is so critically important.
Yeah. So, Jason, again, thank you to you and your team for setting up those meetings while we were at RTC and going over to the Capitol. I have to say, just a little bit of my perspective, it's always exciting when you get to go meet with legislators. And for us, we're in DC, so we're going between Senate buildings and House buildings. And, what was interesting for me was that some of our meetings actually ran longer than they normally do. So we were having to rush to the next meeting, and our lobbyists were having to call ahead and say, we're still coming. But it is interesting when you do go. One of the things that I'll say that was very clear to me is that as you go into the different offices, you have messaging, but it really needs to be tailored to the office that you're going to. So one of the things that we did was make sure ahead of time we knew information about that senator or representative. And it's simple things like, where did they go to school? Do you have connections? Have they been in the healthcare field? Do you know if they have family members who are in the healthcare field? Have they been public, even for us, have they been public about pathologies that they've had where they've had to interface with our professionals? And so part of it, it is very exciting, but I think the preparation too is something that stood out for me, that we really need to know who we're going to speak to. And again, I highly recommend that everyone goes to their offices of their representatives and senators in their state. And if you get to DC, stop in and say who we are, because I can't say enough about just how exciting it is to be there and to be representing the profession. We'll be right back after this short message. Top candidates look for career opportunities on the ASRT Job Bank. Featuring your job openings on the ASRT Job Bank gives you extensive visibility among radiologic science professionals. We offer various recruiting benefits, including personalized job postings, prime placement options, specialized talent matching, and branding opportunities. Customize a recruitment package to fit your exact requirements at asrt.org/jobs. All right, Jason, well, we're going to let you off of the chopping block for a minute. And I think you and I are going to go on the chopping block because Ray does this thing that I don't like, but we tend to do games. We might not have told you we were going to do
okay.
Yeah.
Nice
and I don't know what the
surprise.
game is. So I guess we'll turn it over to Ray.
So I've got a game of trivia that we're going to play.
Oh, Ray.
Now, Jason, given the work you do with so many of our states, I thought we would center this around U.S. landmarks and geography.
Well, you know better, Ray. You know that I say anything but geography. This
No,
is not fair.
it
That's
is-
fine. Go
it
ahead.
is
I'm probably not going to do well either.
Okay,
It's
good. I hope not.
So Jason's one of the smartest people I know.
Yeah, me too.
But Melissa, she's somewhat geographically challenged. So
Very.
this should be fun, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have about 5 questions.
Okay, what are the rules?
I'll ask you both the question, and you both will have to respond with the right answer.
Oh, like we just have to blurt it out.
Yes.
Okay.
Some will be multiple choice. Some will just be a direct
Oh,
answer.
good.
Okay, first question. What is the longest river in the United States?
Rio Grande. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you answered first, so I can guess something else.
That's the one that's the closest. It's by my house.
I mean, I know the biggest is the Mississippi. Is it also the
It's
longest?
also the longest. You're correct. Nicely done, Jason. That was the easy one.
Go New
Melissa.
Mexico. I represent it.
Okay, you did represent it. Good job. Next question. Which state ends in the letter D?
Maryland.
And the bonus is, there's a bonus answer. There's one other state.
Rhode Island.
There you go.
Oh, wow. That was way too hard to think of.
That's a hard one, yeah.
Okay.
Melissa she's like sweating over here.
I am
She's
sweating.
getting ready.
It's getting a little
She's
warm.
putting too much thought into it. Okay, next question. Which states plural, start with the letter A?
Alabama. Arizona.
Arkansas. Alaska.
All 4 correct. Both of you got 2. So
Oh my God. See if we were keeping
I think
score.
we're still
It's
tied at the
teamwork.
game.
Okay.
All right, next question. So Interstate 90 is the longest interstate in the U.S., How many states does this interstate pass through? And this is multiple choice. Is it 9, 13, 15, or 20?
15.
Well, see, she's just going to keep guessing
I'm just
until
guessing,
while
go
I'm
ahead.
counting, right?
Okay,
Like
hold on my
Ohio,
15.
Illinois,
Okay,
Indiana.
Melissa said 15. Jason, go ahead and keep counting.
Jason's actually doing states. It's impressive.
13.
Jason is correct.
Oh, Jason.
And he actually used math. That was impressive.
He used actual logic.
He
so
did use
that's,
logic,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
impressive.
And for our audience who's interested, it starts from Seattle, goes all the way to Boston.
Oh,
It's roughly 3,000 miles.
interesting.
And the states it crosses: Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts. It's a lot of states.
It's a very pretty drive, too.
That's what I've heard.
Really?
Yeah. Next question. In which state is it legal to drive 85 miles per hour?
Legal or illegal?
Legal.
I'm going to guess Montana. I don't know why. I have no logic behind it.
California. Let's
You're
just
both
keep
wrong.
guessing.
Yeah.
Texas.
There you go, Texas.
Wow, Jason.
Not all of the
I think
state,
you're
but in
winning
certain
now.
parts of the state, you can drive 85 miles an hour.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, final question. Which of these is a name of a city? Wheat Patch, Peanut, Rough and Ready.
Peanut.
Rough and ready.
I
The
forget the
answer
first
is
one.
the answer is all of the above.
All the
Oh,
above.
Get
Yeah.
out.
Now, bonus question. Where do these cities reside? They all reside in one state.
Kansas.
Nope. Good guess though.
Iowa.
Somewhere in the Midwest.
No. All in the state of California.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think
I would not have
guessed
expected
California.
that.
Huh. So, Jason, before we finish up, we always have our We See You segment, and that's where we read emails and we ask listeners to write in to radposition@asrt.org. But we actually want you to stay for this one because there was a question in it that you would be absolutely perfect to answer.
So William Harrington sends in a listener review, and I wanted to share a bit of what he provided. I find myself in my 30th year as a technologist. As a proud graduate of a university for the Midwest, my career started in the darkroom era, then to the magical area of Kodak Daylight Processor, to computed radiography, and now to digital radiography. The days of lugging out 10, 15 heavy cassettes for morning portables are now a distant memory. That was serious work. I've gotten much more out of my career than I've ever dreamed, and I don't regret the choice. The most satisfying aspect has been building relationships with patients and new technologists. Thanks so much for the podcast. I'll continue to listen. Well, thank you, William. And William also had a question that is perfect for Jason to address. He asked, can you please discuss the policy of state licensure? And he noted that some perceive this as a money grab. Jason, how would you respond to that?
Yeah. So essentially the question is state licensure a money grab? You know, I've been an RT for 22 years now, and I've thought the same thing. But it's not at all. It's actually a common misconception. Licensure boards, in fact, have to be budget neutral, which means the amount of money they charge for licensure cannot exceed or should not exceed the amount it takes to operate the licensure program. Licensure is really just the best way to protect our profession and our patients and to ensure appropriate level of oversight of the education and training requirements state by state. Again, like we discussed earlier, there's no federal minimum standards that are enforceable. And so it all comes down to what you have in your state, and state licensure is the best way to protect us and our patients.
That's so interesting. So it goes back to what we were talking about, right? It's that it is so much more. The reason why we would need to have regulations in the state, and to hear that the states don't make money off of it, that they're budget neutral, that's really helpful, especially because, I've heard that before as well.
Yeah, it's very helpful to know, and it's not helpful to know that you have to pay an additional fee to have licensure.
Right.
That's something that hits us all. But when you think about what it really does to protect you and your patients,
Yeah.
it's critical. It's absolutely critical.
Well, thank you for that insight, Jason. This has been such a great episode. This is very informative and engaging. And thank you for just speaking to the issue of advocacy and allowing us to understand what some of those call to actions might be. Jason, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Yeah, I'd like to say, just to learn more about advocacy, please visit asrt.org/advocacy. Also, I want to plug the new Ambassadors for RT Advocacy program. Applications actually open November 18th, so listeners, please look out for that. And to learn more about professionalism through advocacy and governance, tune in to the ASRT Live on November 4th, where we're going to continue to discuss all of this along with my incredible colleagues.
And go meet your legislators and vote in the election and do our calls to action.
Yes.
What else?
Yes, just re-listen to the podcast and write all of that information down.
Over and over.
Yes.
Or just give us a call or email us, and we hope to see everybody getting involved.
And what was that email address again?
governmentrelations@asrt.org.
We'll be right back after this short message. ASRT members, did you know that you're sitting on a treasure trove of savings? Introducing ASRT Member Perks, your exclusive getaway to incredible deals. Whether you're shopping for auto insurance, planning a getaway, or treating yourself to a night out, your Members Perks provides you with discounts that can add up quickly. So why not start saving today? Unlock your ASRT Member Perks and experience the benefits you deserve. Visit asrt.org/memberperks to learn more and start saving now. So Ray, that was a great episode, even though you gave the whole geography thing. And while maybe I learned some things from that, maybe.
I would say you're still smarter than a fifth grade. But let's work on your geography a little bit.
All right. Could we mute Ray's mic as we go out? I mean, no, it's okay. But
No,
I think
that was a great episode.
it was.
Yeah.
And I did learn. So thank you for educating me. But also we learned a whole lot from Jason.
Yes. He's just a really smart guy. Him and his team just do an amazing job of overseeing all these different efforts that we have.
Yeah, it really was. And so many calls to action,
Yes.
right? We talked about that it's not just one person, but together we're stronger. So,
Yes,
Jason joked on the episode about going back and listening. And I really want people to listen again and again and again and take notes on those things because we really need to work together.
Yes, every morning you drive to work. Put our podcast
Same
on.
episode. I'd like to take a moment to update our listeners about some resources you can use to learn more about ASRT's advocacy initiatives and get involved. The ASRT is a tireless advocate for medical imaging and radiation therapy professionals, and we provide important information about legislation affecting you and your patients. The ASRT's website's advocacy section at asrt.org/advocacy includes information about state licensure laws, federal regulations, and even has maps that track legislation state by state. In addition, to get involved and take action, visit asrt.org/advocacy action center. There, you can learn about state and federal issues affecting RTs. You can see our important calls to action and even communicate with lawmakers and regulatory agencies. It's easy to use and an effective way that we can all stand up and advocate for our amazing profession. Please get involved. Our listeners again for joining us, and we can't wait till we see you all next time. Don't forget to write in RAD Position at ASRT.org, and don't put yourself in a bad position.
Stay up to date with the RAD Position.
So be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with your colleagues, friends, and family. And to all our medical imaging and radiation therapy professionals, be seen,
Stay RAD.